I want to remind you that we signed a mineral deal, and it says that in the investment fund that should be created, already created, the basically investment from American side could be in the way of weapons. So they could give weapons, and it will be counted in the statutory fund of the investment fund.
The war in Ukraine was somewhat sidelined during this summit, although the Ukrainian President Zelensky did have a meeting with President Trump, which he said was a good conversation. Yevheniia Kravchuk is deputy chair of Zelensky's Servant of the People party and a Ukrainian MP, and she told me what she made of President Trump at the NATO summit today.
It's good that he came to The Hague and to NATO summit. Obviously, it's good that there was a meeting. The tete-a-tete meeting with President Zelensky. We do hope that at the end of the day, Ukraine will be able to receive air defense, which is crucial. Patriots, no other country can give us the air defense that can intercept ballistics. And you could see that the attacks, especially on civilians and Ukrainian cities, had intensified in recent weeks, months. So hopefully that will be, resultful. What I think is good sign is that the NATO countries reached the agreement on enlarging the expenditure on, defense by 5% of GDP, but they included the military aid to Ukraine in these 5%. So if the country spends, gives, buys, does some production together with Ukraine, it will be counted to this 5%.
Well, there's lots of different aspects to talk through with you. Let me start with that question to President Trump about the Patriot missiles, which, as you say, can intercept incoming missiles. I mean, there was no firm commitment, was there, from the president? And indeed, there wasn't a firm commitment from him on any further military hardware. Are you disappointed in that?
Well, obviously, it would be great if we would get the numbers and the firm commitment, but we will proceed with either buying weapons if we need to buy. But also, I want to remind you that we signed a mineral deal, and it says that in the investment fund that should be created, already created, the basically investment from American side could be in the way of weapons. So they could give weapons, and it will be counted in the statutory fund of the investment fund.
And you talked there about the commitment to increase defence spending by NATO members, and that's all about confronting the threat from Russia. But the date for reaching that 5% is not for 10 years. I mean, isn't that just too slow? And of course, many of them may decide to put off the increase, to backload that increase so that there's no immediate increase in defence spending at all.
Well, it is too slow, and Ukraine had bought a lot of time being a shield for European countries that are members of NATO. I'm sure that those countries that are closer to Russia will be spending more and making the expenditure faster, reaching this goal of 5% faster. But when you have an organization that need to have a total consensus, even one country can block a decision, obviously it was the price of the compromise. But hopefully, and I can feel with, when I communicate with my colleagues from other parliaments, they feel that the threat is real, and hopefully it will not be just in paper and will be reached sooner, of course, than 10 years.
What did you make of President Trump's language about President Putin? He did seem to acknowledge that it was rather harder to reach a solution to the war in Ukraine than he might have anticipated. But there was no indication that he's really prepared to ramp up the pressure on President Putin, even ramping up sanctions. He did talk about President Putin being difficult, but I mean, he seems still reluctant to really confront the Russian leader?
Well, I don't think that the sanctions are off the table. They are there because you still have the bill of, we still see the bill of the senators that was registered, and there is huge support both in Senate and less, but also big support in the House of Representatives, the lower chamber. I mean, of course, we would like to see this coming faster because we need to drain the war chest of Kremlin, because right now we see that the economy is experiencing the influence of the sanctions. They had tripled the deficit of the budget, the planned deficit of the budget this year. They're using money from the fund basically to cover that difference. And we do hope that at the end of the day, the price gap will be lowered at least to $45. Hopefully, better $30 per barrel, but it's we also want to see some leadership from EU countries, because basically the shadow fleet are operating in the territory of Europe, going out of the Denmark and their territorial waters.
So much of this NATO summit, though, was dominated by Iran, Israel, by the US bombing of Iran's nuclear sites and so on, and the prospect of ending that war there. Are you disappointed that really so much of the leaders' attention was taken up with that conflict in the Middle East, with the war in Ukraine somewhat sidelined?
I mean, of course, Ukrainians would like to have more attention. It's been more than 3 years of the full-scale invasion, but 11 years of the war itself. So when we have, bombs flying to Ukrainian city, missiles and Shahed drones, and instantly killing in one residential apartment up to 10 people or like 20 people. Of course, we would like to, to have more attention to that. But also we need to understand that Iran and Russia has signed a strategic partnership agreement in January 2025. And Iran had transferred not just Shaheds, but also ballistics. And at least I'm happy that these ballistics that they are, they needed, Iran obviously need it now for their own purposes, and these missiles and these weapons will not be given to Russia and will not be turned to Ukrainian cities.
We heard President Trump at one stage talking about how 7,000 Ukrainians a day were dying in the war. I mean, is that accurate?
No. Well, okay, that's the numbers that we've been hearing, different numbers coming from different, sources. But, and also, of course, there are casualties which are not, death because you get wounded. But I cannot confirm this number.